I'm not letting you go back to the airport without answering the question.
Well, our Constitution is a masterpiece. James Madison was a genius. The Declaration of Independence is, for me, the single greatest piece of American writing. You don't look satisfied.
One's a set of laws and the other's a declaration of war. I want a human moment from you. What about the people? Why is America
Not the greatest country in the world, Professor. That's my answer.
You're saying...
Yes.
Let's talk about...
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of our paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always?
Hey.
And with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You study? Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men, men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore.
Okay, we are live, we are on. This is the third Sunday stream. I welcome, as always, R.C. Roberts from Ferocia on Substack. How are you doing, R.C.?
Well, if I was a little bit more delusional, I'd say, we're having church.
Yeah,
it would be a great it'd be a great way to trap more Midwestern views.
Yep.
Nevertheless, we've begun with a clip from Aaron Sorkin, and if I wasn't irritable before, I am now.
Oh,
Um,
hope I didn't make you irritable.
well, no, not you. Just Aaron Sorkin has that effect. It's like having a rash. You know, it's uncomfortable.
That you
Um,
just can't get rid of.
yeah, well, it's uncomfortable, but you can't keep your eye off of it. You keep itching it. So, um, well, we did.
Let me
We
just, let, pardon me for 1 minute. Let
go
me
ahead.
just say, let me do the intro. This is TJRS, the John Ross Show. I am John Ross with, as always, my good friend. We've known each other for a short time, but we've got to know each other well enough that I think we've become pretty good friends, at least, if you agree, if I say
Well,
so.
well, don't tell my other
Oh,
friends.
no, I won't. I'll try not to
No,
tell
I'm.
myself.
Oh no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Obviously, but
So yeah, as RC just mentioned, we watched a clip from Aaron Sorkin's a hit show because it's not like it only lasted 3 seasons versus
yeah.
it was 8, and it has its flaws obviously. So I'll just say show. I won't say hit show. From Aaron Sorkin's HBO show, The Newsroom, explaining obviously with Jeff Daniels' character, the moderate Republican Will McAvoy explaining to a college student why America is not the greatest country in the world anymore. And I guess today's show is going to be talking about again the difference between Aaron Sorkin as a writer, as a not a great writer but a good writer, and why his version of left politics sucked, in my view. And I think I would believe probably 95% RC you would agree that his
Yeah.
politics, as far as leftism,
Right.
not very
But
good. Not
very,
very good.
very, very concisely put. Um. Well, where do I begin with Aaron Sorkin? We could start with what was his movie? It's The American President. Something.
Yeah, with Michael Douglas.
Yeah, it's like selling us a bottle of shampoo and it's called shampoo. Um, um, we can start there if you want, but I'm gonna make a very general statement.
You have the
Aaron,
floor.
Aaron Sorkin is a good writer in the sense of dialogue.
Right. Nobody can deny
I
it.
well, yeah, and I say that carefully because a lot of people consider dialogue as something that needs to be realistic. I don't agree with that view necessarily. It needs to be something understandable, but I would prefer characters that maybe speak it with a vocabulary a little bit better than mine.
Right.
And a lot of people don't want that. They want, you know, gutter language, which I don't care for. But he does a good job at dialogue in that sense. The themes aren't too in your face, and the characters are one step removed from characters in a Nine Rand book. Like you can tell that they believe in the philosophy of the show, but they aren't as uh, outwardly given to that philosophy. Um, and so his in a let us say in a cinematic manner, and I'm not an expert on cinema in any way. But in a cinematic manner, Aaron Sorkin's work is enjoyable. We should say it's consumable. People can watch it, they can enjoy it. You know, when I watch The West Wing, the West Wing. I got caught up in the relationship between Josh Lyman and Donna. There's things to enjoy about it from that
Right.
perspective.
I
However,
got caught up in the character of Richard Schiff as Toby Ziegler. Just
yes,
throwing it out there.
I think in the whole Sorkin universe, Toby Ziegler is the best character. But we will
Agree.
get to that. We will get to that. But on a political level, it's very obvious that a lot of people will describe Sorkin as idealistic, and in a sense they're correct, because he operates on this idea that power is almost not important. There is no point where the President Bartlett or anybody else exudes any power to get things done. Now
Right.
there are a few characters that are seen in a very villainous way who are spoken about as having exerted power, but they don't tend to, or they tend to do so, but wink, wink, nod, nod, or they take the side of the show
Right.
overall, and I don't appreciate that. I think that's a ridiculous stance. He also the only thing I can say about his politics that is good is he does show politics midstream, where
Right.
it's amongst accidents, random events, things that seem to happen that aren't planned. The only problem I have, for example, to give it a comparison with House of Cards, is House of Cards is a little too linear. It's a little
Yeah.
too I set this up. I
As
mean,
someone who hasn't seen House of Cards,
yeah.
sorry again to interrupt.
Oh,
Uh, I've not seen. I've just say I've not seen House of Cards. Although your accurate, your view on it is pretty much, I would say, accurate. But sorry, go on ahead.
oh, you're good. And so House of Cards is a little too linear. It's a little too set up. It's a little too wink, wink, nod, nod. I actually got this to go this way. There's a that's the one thing I appreciate about Sorkin-esque politics, is that it considers the
Right.
fact that things randomly happen. Now, beyond that, though, the only other thing that I'll say in praise of Sorkin politics, and this is more a matter of cinema, actually, I should take that back. It's not politics. Is that the reason I think that Toby Ziegler is one of the better characters, and probably the closest to the left. I don't know if we'd call him a leftist, but he's close.
Right.
Is he is the only self-conscious character, I think, in the show, because, for example, and you might remember this, there's a part where he's talking to Josh Lyman and he's discussing policy, and
Right.
he gets real upset, and he says that he's tired of being being the leader for the gang that couldn't shoot straight, and talking about how the political battles they lose don't bother him as much as the ones that they don't suit up for. And it's an incredibly self-conscious, insightful thing, because Aaron Sorkin's politics tend to almost always lead or end up in failure.
Right.
And it's I should put it this way: every attempt at success leads to failure, but things get done magically. Things get done sort of not in conjunction, because if you lose all the battles that they lose, you would lose all those legislative fights they have, but they never do, because the story saves them in the end. And so,
Right.
it's interesting how self-conscious that statement is, that, oh, we keep losing, basically. It's like, well, yeah. Which I think is fairly honest about liberal politics.
Right.
It loses. It loses to conservative, the kind of the conservative impulse all the time.
Mhm. I think in a 95% way, it also reflects on again the dialogue of the West Wing, no matter how good it is. And if we kind of look at it, even in the fast forward to 2016, the fact that Trump, won after his win in the election, most I call them moderate liberals were tweeting things out like, "Oh, I'm going to hug my West Wing box set more tonight than I usually do." This kind of I call it utopian view of, hey, left politics is more aligned with shows like The West Wing and to an extent House of Cards than it actually is with real life events, or how is it, real life? Yeah, I'll say that, real life events in modern day politics. You see this view of, it's all about like big speeches and big events and big parties and whatnot. And it's not really like that. I mean, the realism has gotten too far in modern politics, particularly on the left. And when I say left, I mean moderate left.
Well, the West Wing absolutely acts as a sort of escape politically,
Right.
or was an escape politically while Trump was in office. And what's odd, what's odd for me, really, is that the desire to escape to a Bartlett presidency, for example, seems to be merely those people caught up in kind of the idealism that the good, which is honestly from an outside perspective not very good in and of itself, that the good will succeed. And like, for example, there's that episode where Bartlett has two Supreme Court seats, and he gives one to a Republican, he gives one to a Democrat,
And the Democrat ends up getting in jail.
I think so. Yeah, I
think it was when the Democrat got busted for drug use.
Oh,
and,
no, that's a different judge. That's at the beginning. I'm talking about later on when they have I don't remember their names. It was a woman and a man, and they
right.
were
I think the woman was Glenn Close. And,
right. Oh, yep, that's right, because he talked about her shoes.
Right.
Nevertheless, the thing is if you take that, you put that kind of, I'll put one Democrat, one Republican on the court. If you put that into real life, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Because, like, for example, right now, our court is significantly
conservative.
Significantly
more conservative than it was
right
15 years ago.
Right.
Well, I take that back. It always was conservative, even in the days of George W. It's just that the president before our current one has elected and put more hardlining conservatives on the Supreme Court bench that will be there for as long as they are until their passing day. And it's gonna be a fight. But anyway, back to
right,
what you're saying.
right. But and so that's why you take certain things out of Sorkin. If you put them in real life, they don't make any sense, and in fact, they're more damaging to the notion of any sort of even liberal democracy. Like, let's not even set up aspirations for a social democracy or a socialist democracy. Even in the sense of a liberal democracy, the ideas that Sorkin has in his shows don't make sense, and they're detrimental to the function of democracy. And ultimately, the Sorkin universe works off of this very weird dynamic of idealism winning the day, but being realistic about the fact that if you go against the system, you're probably going to lose.
Right.
So for them, it's like for them, it's like it's kind of like talk to a conservative about the free market when they talk about the invisible hand. Sorkin has an invisible hand in his universe that makes sure that everything goes the right way. And that's just focusing on his political, like the West Wing, his political shows. If you focus on the newsroom, for example, to expand this a little bit, the thing about Sorkin's ideal of journalism is that, first off, you can tell that it's shifted a little bit and it has allowed for a little bit more cynicism. Because the newsroom was done in what 2012,
2012 and lasted
where
until
yeah,
I think
where
2014.
right where we were having problems with unemployment. Barack Obama was definitely not as popular as he thought he was going to be,
Right.
and we were still in the Iraq War,
Still in
and
Afghanistan.
yeah,
War.
and I guess we're still in Iraq, but we were still in Afghanistan, and ultimately, his type of journalism kind of it pretended to be a group of people trying to fix American discourse,
Right.
which is an interesting idea in and of itself. And what it ended up doing is saying that the only way to fix the discourse in America is to just take your position and just
Run with it.
push it as far as you can. I will say I do appreciate the part in the newsroom where McAvoy calls the American Tea Party the American
American
Taliban.
Taliban. Yeah.
That's probably the furthest on being radical that I think
That he's
Aaron
ever got.
Sorkin
Yeah.
ever. Yeah, and even then, it's even then that's built on a bunch of hypotheticals. There's that part of the before it happens, and there's a part that that happens in the episode where that is talked about, where all McAfee does is talk about these various hypotheticals in history about what could have happened, which is an interesting take, except for the fact that basically Sorkin is developing in a quasi historical manner that the liberal system is inevitable,
Right.
by pointing out these hypotheticals. The other thing about the newsroom is that the newsroom, I can say, I think with a fair amount of confidence, that it is bad on dialogue. There is lots of yelling. There's a lot of
Lots of yelling, lots of screaming, lots of arguing.
Lots of very dumb humor. A guy walking into a newsroom. Well, I was gonna say like what's his name? Jim, walking into the newsroom, get hit in the face with a door. It's like, what? I'm supposed to laugh at this?
Yeah, or like the whole romantic. Unlike Josh and Donna from West Wing, you see this sort of like I kind of watched it again recently. You see like this. I don't want to say throuple because that's probably not the right word, but like this love triangle between Jim, Maggie, and Lisa, Maggie's roommate. Of like that Jim likes Maggie, but she's dating Dawn. They have feelings for one another. So Dawn sets Jim up with Lisa, and at the end of the first season, there's the scene where they're doing the Jim is on the Sex and the City tour bus, and Maggie goes into this rant of like, you know that when you're dating someone, or I think it was like you're in love with your best friend's boyfriend, and he's dating your best friend, and he's on the bus, and he runs after her, and she runs away. Like she finds out he's on the bus. She's like embarrassed. She runs away. Mm-hmm. He goes after her, and the thing unfortunately ended up on the internet because it's reported so many times.
Right.
And then we set up the events of season 2 of their relationship.
Right. Well, right, and I kind of feel like he used the love triangles and the relationships as compensation for the fact that the content of the show just was. I mean, there's only so many minutes you can spend on people being in the newsroom reporting things. His better episodes are when they have big issues.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of think this is the thing that irritated me about the newsroom. He kind of treated it like a SNL style of a show where he was always trying to bring in whatever was topical. And SNL is very famous for every show they have usually is topical. And so
they do
that's why I say
shows,
right. Yeah. And that's why I say it's kind of an SNL style. where it's, you know, and I guess you could also say that with the West Wing. It was a little bit better done, but it's basically attempting to be topical the entire time.
Right.
And it's like,
well,
well,
you got like,
right.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and for me, it's kind of like, well, that's great, I guess. You know, it is a newsroom, but realize that either they're going to have an emergency every single day, or you are going to have to compensate. And he tried to compensate. He did it with relationships, but it was just bad relationships, because the relationships are kind of set up where they need the drama. Like, excuse me, but sorry, for example, with most, you know, TV relationships, there's the people in love, and there's the obstacle, and that obstacle usually changes a lot. But for the newsroom, the obstacle never really, it slightly changes a little bit,
Right.
but the changes that happen are usually changes to keep things the same, as opposed to changing things. So, like, for example, with Josh and Donna, it was that they were seeing different people. They were in a work relationship, so it wasn't entirely clear if that was ethical or not. There was the fact that Josh was sleeping around, Donna was sleeping around, and it just eventually got to the point where she quits because she wants a better job. But that all is logical. That makes sense. The obstacles kept changing. That's fine. With Jim and Maggie, that's right. With Jim and Maggie, the only major change that made any sense was her going to Africa and then coming back. But that was so out, like that came out of nowhere. So that was a problem. Yeah. But ultimately, the politics of newsroom is more or less a politics of, oh, this is the truth, and the truth is exactly what, you know, the creator believes, and we're just going to keep saying it over and over again. It's like, well, you know, it was a little interesting when they had to send, what's his name,
Jim, to cover the Romney campaign.
Actually, different. That was interesting too. But the one where the FBI shows up to get sources about things, and
where
they send him,
they send him to the Occupy movement, and he's got some, you know, he bought like I think it was like an encrypted computer, or not Jim, but Will McAvoy gave Dev Patel's character his credit card to get an encrypted computer, and he got into some trouble because he broke some laws as far as like data breaches, and it caused a whole controversy for the show.
And if he had created the show where that stuff happened at the beginning, and you worked your way through them balancing the regular news with the relationships and then this encrypted computer, that's different. That would have been an interesting show. But they didn't do that. They did that at the very end, and they're making a point about government overreach, which
I can sense kind of also as far as the politics of newsroom. You know, Aaron Sorkin himself makes no secret that he's a Democrat, like a liberal, like probably even like a left liberal. I would say neoliberal at best. That's my take. If anyone has a different take, then that's fine. But I sense the politics, like, for example, Will McAvoy's character is a registered Republican, despite calling, again, the Tea Party the American Taliban. He gets in the thorn of the side of many conservatives in running for office. Case in point, there was an episode of Newsroom where Sutton Wall, this character that's based off a real life character who is black and gay and works at a prestigious university, is campaigning with Rick Santorum during his 2012 campaign. And God, I wish I could find the clip, and I'm tempted to. So, with your
Right.
question, do you mind if we look for it, or
Well,
I could probably just explain it?
yeah, I was gonna say you
Basically,
should.
what it
Yeah, I was gonna say
just
you should
explain
probably
it.
just explain it. Yeah.
Explain it. Okay. Well, basically, what happened was Sorkin is or not. Will McAvoy is questioning the Sutton Wall character. Why are you working for a political candidate on the right who has the most anti-gay conservative agenda? They even play a clip of his Santorum going on Fox News Sunday and saying who I know people who were gay and who aren't anymore. They had that gay lifestyle and they're not living anymore. That was Santorum in real life saying that on Fox. And McAvoy is questioning this character, like, why are you working for this guy? And they get into like a back and forth about, his position on abortion, and he's treated me so well, and it just goes back and forth, and then it's like they have a back and forth, and Sutton Wall says, don't define me by my blackness, or don't define me by my gayness. Just FYI, the character is African American. Again, you can go and search for this. It's an interesting episode. It's an interesting part of an episode. I think it was the one where McAvoy, he goes to therapy, and because he's having like trouble sleeping,
Right.
and
Yeah.
whatnot.
It's Sorkin has a tendency, and
And that's also, let me just
Go ahead.
again, sorry to interrupt you again,
Oh, you're
but that's kind of where my feeling is, that the politics of the newsroom are more conservative, than they are conservative leaning on probably like 95% of the time than they are liberal. I think Sorkin kind of looked at the view of Fox News and thought, well, this business model has really been influenced in American journalism, no matter how bad it is. And so that's the way I'm going to skew the newsroom versus the West Wing, which had a very like moderate liberal stance. I mean, the West Wing is liberal. No one can deny that. It's written from a liberal point of view. The American President was written from a liberal point of view. And this one, I think, was his take to kind of show the other side with the newsroom, Aaron Sorkin. Let's show a conservative side. Like I just mentioned, one of the characters, Jim, goes and covers the Romney campaign to kind of get away from Maggie. But I'm ranting on, so
Yeah. Well,
been watching
all,
too much
all,
of
I,
the
all
show.
I was going to say is this. I think the best way to describe Sorkin's politics is Clintonite. He's
Yeah.
definitely a Clintonite. And
Yeah.
because like, for example, a lot of the characters in the West Wing are based off people in the Clinton White House.
Yep.
Rahm Emanuel is the basis for Joshua Lyman. There are a
George
bunch of others.
Stephanopoulos.
Yeah. He's
You
Sam
name it.
Seaborn. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, you name it.
And so
Well,
the
again, with sorry again, I tried to
oh, you're
interrupt
good.
you. But again, with the Seaborn character, you've got Rob Lowe, who left the show, I believe it was in season 3, because of a salary dispute, going on Twitter in 2016 and, for lack of a better word, bitching about Bernie Sanders raising taxes on him, but he's yet like one of the most wealthy elitist actors. And at the time, I was very pissed, to be quite honest, as a Sanders supporter in 2016. My initial reaction was, hey, dude, why are you bitching about getting your taxes raised? You're the most wealthy elitist, one of the most wealthy elitist actors on the planet. You should be able to pay your fair share in taxes as much as the working class do. So you shouldn't be complaining about anything that Bernie Sanders is proposing. So that was just my take on Seaborn.
Right.
Because then he shared a clip. He used Rob Lowe. He used Sam Seaborn against Bernie Sanders. There was that clip, that episode where I forget what season, but it was the one where he was talking about taxes, about the working class having to, I think it was like the working class being able to pay their fair share. Again, you're going to have to probably go look at this, go back and look at this episode. I'm sure you can find it, of course, on the old YouTube there. But again, I attempted at my best to watch the show last week and came across this episode. This, it's just this, again, as you say, a Clintonite version of Hollywood politics. But then again, go ahead.
Well, all I was going to say is that I would call him Clintonite, and I would say that the newsroom is just an extension of that. And the reason it appears more conservative. By the way, I think him having Will McAvoy as a conservative is a false sort of hearkening back to real Republicans who are considered reasonable. I don't think that's necessarily really ever been the case. There are some Republicans that are okay, but few and far in between. And he uses Will McAvoy to kind of just allow for that conservatism to come in.
Right.
But I think the reason he does that is because his position is very Clintonite. And so the media in 2012, to be a Clintonite is more or less to be a moderate Republican.
Right.
And so he had to kind of justify, more or less. I guess the problem with the newsroom is that it's constantly trying to justify its politics, as opposed to the West Wing, where it was kind of more in vogue, and so it didn't have to. It was, the Democrats. And so that's definitely an issue with the newsroom. Here's another issue I have with the newsroom. It is based on a very pervasive myth in political discussions, and this myth doesn't just affect Republicans; it affects Democrats. It even affects socialists to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
People will try to anchor their ideas in a part of American history, and they will say, well, we used to do X, and now we don't. For example, that whole speech there at the beginning that we showed at the beginning here. He's like, oh, we once used to be. We used to pass laws for moral reasons, fight wars for moral reasons. Like, no, we did not. We have never fought a war for a moral reason. We have always fought it for a strategic reason. And moral laws are, in my opinion, bad laws. Moral laws driven by moral ideas are ridiculous. For example, the Patriot Act could be seen as a moral law. Is it a violation of our rights? Yes. But you can make the moral argument that the government had to protect us. You could also make that argument and that argument was made, for people who passed prohibition. Moral laws are not good laws. And so it's an odd kind of conservative take. And I think it's interesting that Mackenzie compares Will to Don Quixote. Because Don Quixote, as much as everybody likes to reference him and stuff, it's an old man on a donkey, okay? And he's absolutely delusional. And so the newsroom, the Will is Don Quixote. It's like, yeah, I can see that he's a jackass chasing women. So ultimately the politics of Aaron Sorkin are it's Clinton-esque. It's Clinton. Yeah. If she had won in 2016, I don't doubt he would have tried to revive.
He would have changed. Yeah.
Yeah, and like
so he did now.
Well, right. But
he technically didn't revive it. They did a special for HBO Max, but
yeah.
I didn't see it.
It's okay. I didn't see it either. I saw a little bit of it being advertised, and it's like, you should just call this, the nursing home wing. It's like, this is not good. Let Richard Schiff get back to being on The Good Doctor.
Yeah.
But anyway, but I think that's fair to say about Aaron Sorkin. I don't know if there's a lot else you can say. He's a pretty good director, has good dialogue. His politics are Clinton-esque.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that came close to me, that came kind of in in relationship with the article, your AOC article, is back when she was first elected in 2018. Aaron Sorkin went on, I think it was Fareed Zakaria on CNN, and I think he was asked, "Who do you like? Who do you like the new?" He said he liked the new crop of Democrats, and he told them to stop acting like children. I could be paraphrasing here, but those were his exact words.
That sounds like him. That sounds like him.
Also, like praising people like Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar. I mean, yeah, he is at best very much so, rightly so, a Clinton-esque liberal. I say neoliberal, but I'd say all the same. And his writing, again, while good, reflects that. And he's I would say at the moment, maybe not even ever, he's never and not been a friend to progressive left politics or progressive leftists in general, no matter how much he tries to portray himself as such.
Well, he tries to portray himself as a progressive, which he is not.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's the Democrats' propagandist. Is
right.
What he is. And whether he means to or not, he is. And so it's watching him go on shows and tell people to stop acting like children, or there was something, I forget who he was talking to. I think it might have been Obama, but his advice was like, it's about the economy, stupid. It's like, okay, they said that during the Clinton era. It's like, I know you're trying to be cool, be quiet. Why they're having him on for his political opinion is beyond me. So
that's the same view I have.
You're right.
So yeah, that is our take on Mr. Sorkin himself. In plain English, folks, he's a good writer, but his left politics stink. And
he's a mildly good writer who has some good dialogue.
Right.
Who basically he has the politics of a well-moneyed liberal. He's Bill Clinton on drugs.
Yes, Bill Clinton on steroids, maybe. Put it that way. Or I can't think of, maybe Walter Mondale, but Mondale, I don't know. That's one other moderate that I can think of. I was going to say Jimmy Carter, but to his credit, Carter has tried at best to be somewhat progressive post presidency, even though that he was conservative when he was in his presidency reflects that it was conservative, but since then he's become more progressive and he's tried. I mean, I would give him that. But yeah, I would say Bill Clinton on steroids. A mildly good critique or mildly good writer in Aaron Sorkin, as you said, but a fair and honest critique of your left politics. Again, they stink. I think, as we said in our, I won't say too much in our private conversation, but we said maybe this will give him something to think about, maybe something to write about.
Yeah, hopefully this critique is I should say, maybe he'll have an original idea at some point here.
Yep.
All right.
I wish that he was more active on social media. I mean, I probably has his reasons why he's not, but I kind of wish he was, because I'm like, hey man, this is our critique of you, and maybe you'll kind of get an idea of putting. I'm
a little opposite. I'm glad he's quiet. He should just But anyway,
that's all right.
That's me being a misanthrope. But
it's all right. It's all good. Yeah. So I can't imagine to tell you how many West Wing episodes I actually had to watch. Although I will say, Richard Schiff, great actor. Toby Ziegler is by far, again, the best character, the most honest character on there, because he's not afraid to say what he feels about the aspects of the Bartlett administration.
Right.
He does get in trouble towards the tail end of the administration because he leaked those I think it was NSA leaks that were not authorized, and he almost faced some I think criminal charges.
Honestly, if the government's going after you for leaking documents, I mean, that kind of makes you a hero in my book. So,
Yeah, it's more like a whistleblower type, like the Edward Snowden,
well,
Chelsea
yeah,
Manning.
right, yeah,
Yeah,
and so as much as I didn't care for that kind of ending, um, I mean, if you want to get on my good side, don't be friends with the government. So,
yeah. Well, he got pardoned at the end too, so
yeah, he did. Yeah.
so that was good. But also, Martin Sheen, to be clear, is a decent actor.
Oh, they're all good actors. You can be a
Yeah,
good actor and be put into a bad
okay,
sort of cinematic universe.
yeah,
So
but
it's like Robert Downey Jr. He's a good Iron Man, but I don't care for Marvel. So
yeah. Anyway, so moving on from that, I may have to screen share again. So hang tight. We're going to talk about your new article, and if you give me one moment, I'll just throw it up on the screen here. And here you go. And hold on, let me put some applause sign. This is your new article from the Ferocia Animi installment of Notes in the Margins. So I hope you can hear this applause. Okay, that's enough. It's
it's
just
all
the
right.
thing. I have buttons on this thing that I rarely use. I should use them more often for comedy purposes. But anyway, so your new article, the 11th installment of Notes in the Margins. Speaking of AOC, the dress, obviously, the tax the rich she wore at the Met Gala got in once again in the ire of conservatives. What a surprise! Because
Uh-huh.
they never seem to. Uh, they never seem to nip.
What aren't they mad about? Um,
It's kind of something. AOC is always the thorn in the side, whether you like her or hate her, whether you're fair to her or critical of her. You got to admit, man, she's just the thorn in the side of some older right Republicans. That's all I can say. But
right.
anyway, I'm going to share it one more time and let people see it because if they want to, because this is your newest installment again, Notes in the Margin. So why don't you tell the folks what this is about?
So, this installment of the Notes in the Margins, and Notes in the Margins, I should probably give this context too. So, I write articles. I try to do it every week. Sometimes I miss a week. But Notes in the Margin is where I take minor issues that I'm not going to dedicate an entire essay to. And I write about them because they pique my interest, but, they can be dealt with fairly quickly. Um, And for this Notes in the Margin, I had two topics, which is AOC's dress. Honestly, I debated talking about it because I think it's ridiculous. But I did because I thought there could be sort of a good take on it. And the dress for AOC, as well as the is it Nasser?
Not
Nasser?
Nasser.
Nasser?
Larry
Okay.
Nasser.
The Larry
We'll talk
Nasser
about that towards the
trial.
tail end.
Right, yeah, we'll talk about it towards the end. But those are the two topics that were picked for this. And to start with the first topic, I find fault in the way everyone has reacted to AOC's dress. You would think that she had sewn one letter on there and she was a part of a Nathan Hawthorne story. I'm referring to the Scarlet Letter for those of you who
Right.
don't read. And so I'll put it this way. What we saw with her going to the Met Gala in a dress that says tax the rich is the result of a political hand job topped off with photo op activism. That's it. That's all it was. And nobody should be surprised. She does this anyway. I'm fairly suspicious of politicians. I don't
Right.
think they're, You can't be an honest person and be a politician. But also, AOC has never been a, let's call it a far leftist kind of Eugene Debs style politician. Ever.
Right. No matter
And,
what they would want her to portray,
right.
which is mainly, a democratic socialist. But.
Right. She is, in my book, a progressive. And she's always acted like one. And the thing, though, for me that kind of irked me was the explanation for why she's there, what she's doing, and what it means are all very obvious, all very simple. It's a part of being a politician. She did somebody a favor, and they did her a favor, and she went to the gala. But on the right and the left, it was turned into a circus of spectacle. On the conservative side, with only an argument for defending billionaires and millionaires from being taxed. That argument aside, they had no argument or reason to take issue with AOC because her activism doesn't really do anything. She's around a bunch of rich people anyway. And they didn't seem to mind. So they devolved into an argument that was incredibly lewd, if you ask me. Where they're talking about, like the way she took the picture, she was, trying to be, lewd. And that's not the case. She's just taking a picture. And people need to chill out on that. I was gonna say, particularly conservatives, Tucker Carlson is the one who did this the most, did this insinuation the most.
Yeah.
And it's like, listen, I'm not gonna have somebody take advice on how to dress from somebody who used to wear a bow tie unironically. You can just, you can be quiet about how fashion should go. I don't want to hear it.
Right. You should just look in the mirror. His MSNBC days.
Well, I was gonna say no. Don't look in the mirror. He probably doesn't have any mirrors. They probably break.
Well, I'd say talk to the mirror. Is what I'd say. His MSNBC days are going to come back to haunt him because I vividly remember those days and the bow tie and
I was gonna say I'm sure he doesn't have any mirrors because every time he looks in them they probably break. But on the conservative side, it was just primal wailing, and it's ridiculous as always. On the left side, though, on the left, it almost seemed like the people who I term as populist leftists, and those would be people like, say, for example, Jimmy Dore.
Right.
Those kind of people also took part in this kind of primal attack, trying to turn something that's very obvious, very simple, into something more than it is. For example, Jimmy Dore's response to this was so eloquent. I was surprised. He's putting words into sentences now, and I'm proud of him that he can do that. Probably with the help of cue cards. And he said AOC is a libtard through and through. So eloquent.
Yeah.
I think he uses his tweets the same way Ronald Reagan used index cards. And quite frankly, they're both just as fake. It's just Ronald Reagan had more hair. And nevertheless,
he was also a movie actor, so
unfortunately for the American public. But nevertheless, they took her wearing that dress and they're like, oh, this is ineffective activism. It's like, yes. It's like, I don't know what you expect. Do you expect people to fight you on that? Yeah. She wasn't, it wasn't really activism. It was kind of just more her own personal kind of,
Her own personal
you know,
taste.
yeah. And then you have the critiques are kind of this restatement of the obvious, with you could almost say that they restate the obvious. They just have like spooky music in the background, like something bad's gonna happen. And it's
Right.
like, well, no, I get it that you don't like her, but if you want to be mad at people who do things symbolically, and don't wield their power very well, Bernie Sanders was in the Senate forever, and he did practically nothing. And so, it's
We're not hating on Bernie, by the
right,
way.
right.
This is just for those supporters like myself who are going to probably watch this and be like, "What do you mean you're hating? Bernie did nothing. He's done so much." No, we're just doing a comparison.
Yeah, and the point is I feel like the attention given to AOC probably has something else. Has to do with something else other than the things that are stated. And her dress is just it. I don't understand why it got so much attention. She dressed up and went to a gala. She got tickets from helping somebody out. Okay. She's a politician. This happens.
She took a few pictures. She ate some good fancy food.
Right.
What's the big deal, folks?
Yeah.
I mean,
and also the thing is this: she's never, pretended to be something of a like some kind of radical reformer. I mean, she has taken on the label of socialist, but as I've told you before, it's easy to be a socialist when you're outside the halls of power, and she was a socialist while she was campaigning.
Yeah, and when she got elected, that kind of it stayed, but then it kind of went away.
Right, and so focusing specifically on the dress, the responses to her were redundant and just thanks Captain Obvious. Your issues have been noted again for the 14th billionth time. We'll get around to it. We'll turn on some elevator music so you can calmly wait as we explain to you that this is
this is formality.
Well,
and speaking to conservatives that have again been in the thorn of the side of she has been in the thorn of the side of conservatives since the day she got elected.
Right, and it's not right, and unfortunately, that's mostly branding. In my opinion, her being her being the thorn in the side of conservatives is mostly branding. They don't like her because she's a woman. They don't like her because she's a feminist. They don't like her because she takes various positions that they wouldn't take. And so that's the conservatives' problem, and that they can cope however they want, I guess.
Right.
But with leftists, part of the problem, I think, and I've said this before, it's kind of a theme of mine with the left. The left is incredibly out of touch with the way power works. And so what happens is they will see a situation like this where she's in a dress at the gala and they freak out. Oh, she's supporting the system. Well, yes, she's a part of the system. She happens to be a politician. I know it's hard to pay attention to things on an everyday level, but if you open your eyes, you can do it. And ultimately, I feel like
the other thing is they made her a politician.
They made her
elected. I mean, they took her side and they said, "Hey, you might go out, like you said, you might go out there and campaign as a socialist, but in here you're going to play our system." The other thing was like, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like a broken record almost because first off, not only just stating the fact that whatever they're seeing is not really out of character, but the inability to handle the way power works. They, a lot of leftists go, well, for example, I have some friends who are like, well, if AOC is so radical, why didn't she support Medicare for all? Why didn't she support, this, that, and the other? Or why didn't she get this passed? And it's like, listen, she is a congresswoman in the halls of Congress. She doesn't have a majority. She doesn't even have that many friends in her own party.
Yeah.
And you think she can just go in there and change things? She cannot.
Just like that, at the snap of a finger. No.
Right.
It's
This.
harder.
This is not House of Cards. There's not some secret person you can appeal to behind the scenes who's making sure everything works out a certain way. She goes in there and she has to compromise, and she has to deal with people, and she has to work with the power structure as it is. And people who criticize AOC, it's like, listen, you need to pick. Do you want a completely different political system where socialism can be had? Or do you want to work within the system to have socialism? Because if you want the first one, you should not care what's going on with AOC. You should be looking at outside organizations. You should be looking at a way to set up a socialist party, for example. You should be working towards that kind of organization. But if you do think that socialism can be done by just reforms in the United States and using politicians, then you better be prepared for the fact that, power makes all things jagged. Power makes all things straight crooked. And you are going to have to compromise and deal with the system. You can't turn it over in one day. You're going to have to deal with years of American history where the goal of the founding fathers, for example, and this is pretty well documented, the goal of the founding fathers was not democracy. It wasn't dictatorship, but it wasn't democracy either. James Madison, at many points, references what he called the iron law of oligarchy as a way to comfort landowners in the United States and say, listen, the new government is not going to let people just take your stuff. It's not going to allow for just democracy where people can overturn. They were not interested in that kind of politics. They were interested in a republic, and at that, kind of a republic with a House of Commons and a House of Lords. That's what they were interested in, and it's changed. Obviously, just a little bit. Certain people have had different ideas about different things, but that's the system you have to deal with if you're a politician who has socialist ideals. That's the system you're going to have to deal with. If you believe in the system, if you believe it can change, then you're going to have to compromise, and you're going to have to work with that. And if that's what you want from AOC, then I'm sorry, but her wearing a dress to the Met Gala that says tax the rich is the least of your concerns, because she's working in the halls of power, and she doesn't have all the chips. In fact, if leftists continue to go after her, for example, and she gets into a weaker and weaker and weaker position, then she's not going to have any political capital at all. And so you're going to, be a self-fulfilling, prophecy, and she won't be able to do anything. So that's what irritated me about the dress, is that it gets to the point where not only do you have to restate the obvious for people, but you have to explain to them that power doesn't work the way they think it does. It's not a tweet. You can't go on. It's not a Jimmy Dore episode where you can just rant and hope to God that somebody does what you say. I'm sorry, that's not how the world works. There are interests outside of yours. Plus, you're dealing with the American populace, which is mostly not leftist.
Yeah,
the
hosting
majority of
audit.
it is, yeah. And even if you think your leftism helps them, it doesn't matter. Their interests are not yours. And so,
Right.
the fact that you have to explain this to people, and then on top of this comes people who call themselves theorists or like critical theory or however you want to spin that bottle. They come in, and for example, the people who were the worst at this were people who like Mark Fisher. They had that meme where they quote the Wikipedia page of capitalist realism. God forbid you don't quote a book because they don't care about books. They're theorists by memes, and
Yeah.
so they quote Wikipedia and juxtapose that picture onto a picture of AOC in her dress, and they're start talking about capitalist realism. As I said in the article, they say never meet your heroes, and for me, I'd flip that around. I'd say heroes should never meet their fans because they're idiots. And luckily
Right.
for Mark Fisher, he's dead and he doesn't have to meet his fans because his fans are idiots. And well, because what does that meme do? Not a goddamn thing. Oh, this is
Right.
capitalist realism. This is somebody trying to do an alternative to capitalism, but it's not really. Well,
Right.
AOC's not trying to do an alternative to capitalism. She's saying tax the rich, which is generally a capitalist approach. It's a progressive approach, in fact. And thanks for stating the obvious and then trying to show us that you really enjoy critical theory. No one gives a good goddamn, or they shouldn't anyway. But
Yeah.
so that's why I wrote that article with kind of a biting voice, because it's a little irritating that you have to explain this to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
You
rather
have to, like, explain it more, like, time and time again. And it's just like you said, it becomes a broken record. It's like, how many more times do I have to say it?
right.
How many
And
more
also
times must I explain it to you?
and also it's odd to listen to people explain the way they fetishized AOC, because they're like, well, she's doing false activism. Okay, how about going after the politicians who do no activism at all? Or how about you go after the politicians who are spending their time hanging out with oil barons and other industries? Why not go after the other Democrats who do worse things? Or why not go after Bernie Sanders for being for the various times he's been symbolic, he's been performative. By the way, being performative in politics is bound to happen. It's politics. The media is how
It happens to everyone.
right. And so people say it's performative, and if you ask them what they mean by performative, they end up just meaning, oh well, it gets a lot of attention from the media. And it's like, well, yeah, because it's politics. It's going to get a lot of attention from the media.
Yeah, politics is politics.
Yeah. It's been that way since Theodore Roosevelt, when he used to have the press come meet in the West Wing. Funny, full circle there. He had the press. He would have the press come meet in the West Wing, so you could tell them what's going on. And so the media has been involved in politics definitely for American history ever since.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's going to get attention.
Right, and it's run off so much now. I mean, even during the Trump administration, with him calling it like fake news, and like the CNNs of the world, like the cable news chatter got bigger and bigger as Trump and the Trump administration, just people started getting fired, and just controversy and scandal and shit like that started coming out. And here we are post-Trump into the Biden administration, and everything's just kind of normal again. And even though there are controversial stuff, it's not like a big old shit show. I mean, it is actually a shit show now, but it's not as like reality focus driven as it was. Right?
Well, we've kind of gone back to a West Wing style politics, where the president is boring, but he has ideals that we care about, and he's a friendly face for a bad system. Gore Vidal used to complain that people thought that a way to change the system was just if we could elect a really nice person, things would be okay, which
Yeah.
Biden shows is not the case. Although
Yeah.
I am not afraid to say that Biden's doing well taking people out of Afghanistan. I think he should do that. I think he
Right.
should, excuse me, he should not give into the pressure to go back. He has
Right.
not. But again, that's why the first part of that article is pretty biting. It's very irritating, and
Yeah.
generally speaking, there's a lack of realism. There's a lack of what I call looking at things at eye level, because not only does our media like to present issues without historical context, and leftists do this too. I should say the populist leftists usually do this, where they present things without any historical, context, and they go, oh, this thing's going on, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, this is a sign that capitalism is getting bad. I have read articles, for example, I really like H.L. Mencken, and there's a lot of older reporters that I like to read from the 1920s and 30s and World War I, World War II. A lot of the problems they discuss are problems we have now. They talk about the media not paying attention to the right things. They talk about, disingenuous politicians, things like that. This stuff has been going on for a bit. It's not as new or as fantastical as people say.
Right.
But ultimately, the leftists who go after AOC can never justify why they're fetishizing her, because it's always about her. It's always, oh, I
Right.
can't believe, somebody said that AOC was wearing that dress was repugnant because she was reinforcing the neo-feudal political economy that we have in America, which confused me, because either we're a capitalist society or we're a neo-feudal society where we've moved beyond capitalism by going backwards. You can't have both. And so the analysis gets ridiculous. And I think the reason the analysis is ridiculous is because of how obvious the situation is, and because the analysis exists as a justification for fetishizing AOC. You're either going to have to deal with all the politicians. And I don't mean all in a literal sense. You don't have to go to each one. But either you're going to have to accept that all politicians work this way because that's how the power structures in the United States work, or you need to accept the fact that you're going after one politician based off of subjective personal issues, and
Right.
that's your particular pathology, and you need to stop, because
Right.
it's not fun anymore. It's very annoying.
Yeah, it's not. It used to be that way, but times have changed. Society has changed. More.
Well, I guess I'm being too generous saying that it used to be fun, but you know what I mean is that
Yeah.
when she first went into politics, okay, you're criticizing her because she
She's
got
an
onto the
outsider.
political, she's on the political scene now. When you're criticizing
She's
something
there.
well, now that you're criticizing something as low as that, that's just stupid. It's one thing to say, hey, look, excuse me again. It's one thing to say, oh, well, I've looked at her legislative
Agenda.
not agenda, her legislative record, and seen that it is lacking, because it is. She has not quite done much of what she should have done. It's another thing entirely to use her appearance at a gala as fodder for the rage industry.
Yeah.
That's just stupid. So
Yeah, definitely. And to that point there, as far as AOC not doing what she has mostly been able to do. I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, I will give her the benefit of the doubt in some areas. It's hard to get your progressive ideals through and through when there's like a majority of conservative opposition, obviously, against her.
right.
It's also kind of like the point I was trying to
Yeah.
make
Oh, you're
was
good. You're good.
the fact that, like, remember back 3 years, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when there was this video that was leaked of AOC when she was a student at Boston University in 2010, and it was like an intro for the students, for the incoming students at BU, and they danced in a Breakfast Club style video. It was her and a bunch of students, and when that got released, the right wing, for some reason, for obviously one reason or another, just like got, I'm using my own words here, bent out over it. And I'm just like, this is bull.
Yeah.
You're trying to do something. Like, the point I'm trying to make is you're using AOC as a way to say that she's doing something bad, when it, like what you said, it really isn't.
Right.
She's being played as a victim when she really should.
Right. When you indulge in petty politics, you stop focusing on the important interests. When it's all of a sudden about, oh, this politician is ridiculous. Okay, that's fantastic. All the politicians are ridiculous. Okay, and
Yeah,
I don't understand. The critique. What's your point? What are you trying to get at? Are you talking about do you think that she's stopping legislation? Do you think that she's the one in control? Because she's not. I had somebody characterize her and say, "Oh, if you don't think that AOC is just Nancy Pelosi in a Che Guevara shirt, then you're wrong." It's like, well, she's not.
no, not
Because
at all.
she is not all Congress people have the same kind of power. People at the head of committees have more power than people who are not at the head of committees. If you remember, she tried to get on the head of one committee or another, and she was refused by Nancy Pelosi.
Right.
And so she is doing, she is fighting with the power structure. Now, is she always fighting with it? No, there are times where she's on their side, and she's a capitalist politician. I'm sorry, she's a progressive capitalist politician. She's not always going to fight it on everything, but she also doesn't have the power to go in there and go, oh yeah, I want this legislation done. And because people were saying, people were saying, for example, oh, you could. When Nancy Pelosi was trying to run to get the Speaker of the House again.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you could trade your vote for Nancy Pelosi for getting certain legislation. It's like, no, she doesn't have enough. Yeah, she doesn't have enough pull in the Democratic Party. The other people would just outvote her. And it's like, so.
And that's the thing that Jimmy Dore was doing, was like, during the whole force the vote scenario, it was like, you're just trying to get her elected and you're supposed to be. It's like, you don't understand.
Right. Well, yeah.
You have no idea what it's like to be, like, I'm speaking of Jimmy Dore.
Right, yeah.
I know. He doesn't understand the sort of less of pull that she has, because she's still a newbie. I mean, she's 2.5 years out of being her first year, but she's still relatively an outsider versus the people that have been there 50 years. I'm just putting a number out there. I mean, Nancy Pelosi has been in power. She's in her 80s now. She's been in power for so long that she's like the snap of a finger.
Well, it's not even that though, because if you consider AOC as more progressive than the Democrats, then not only is she going to have to deal with issues and legislation with the Democrats themselves, she's going to deal with it with Republicans, which kind of leads to another point that I wanted to make. A lot of leftists take for granted this position that, oh, the United States, the people would agree with me. The people believe what I believe. No, they don't. A good majority of them don't agree with you at all, because America is not a socialist country. In fact, it never has been. Now, have there been a fair amount of people who have been socialists? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how it goes. America has always been, in my opinion, a fairly conservative country. And
We've actually become more leftist in the last few years, but generally
I think
speaking, we're still
I
conservative.
think I think we've made some progress. I would say maybe not leftist. I think we've become more progressive.
Yeah,
And I think that has been less about progressive ideals as it's been about the fact that as our country starts having problems with prosperity, we, the American people start saying, hey, listen, the government exists because of us. And so the government owes us, something in return. And by owe us, I mean, like, people believe, especially nowadays, that the government should be investing in infrastructure. We don't
right,
need a military budget that's like what, 75% of the budget. We don't need that.
right,
We don't want that. We want money to be given so that we have good infrastructure, we have good public transportation, we have good health care. That's what we
good
want.
education.
And yeah, and so we've become more progressive, but I think it's mostly been uh, a matter of a historical force. Sort of, as the empire declines, as it's been declining for a while, we have to look inward. And unfortunately, that both means that there's an upping in surveillance and things like that.
Yeah,
But there's also an attempt to focus our money on infrastructure. Um, Although, as we go into debt more and more, and I said this last time, but as we
yeah.
go into debt more and more, we're going to spend it on the military because we've lost the ability to be prosperous. Um,
We don't have a
so,
prosperous military that we once did.
well, we don't even have a prosperous as a prosper. We don't have an economy that's as prosperous as it once was.
Yeah,
And
the,
so,
the
um,
2008 recession is still being felt, 10, about like 15
right.
years later.
And so I would say that we're a bit more progressive, but it's not necessarily by choice. And
Yeah,
so, but leftists take it for granted because either they think like Caitlin Johnstone that everybody is confused because propaganda covers our eyes and everybody doesn't believe what she believes because they just they don't know the truth. She thinks the truth is socialist, and it's like, well, no, the truth is the truth.
right.
As far as socialism's concerned, socialism is the best for our interest. I firmly believe that. I think the sign of a civilization is that a government gives back to its people, which is something our government does not do. And so for me, I think socialism is the right way, but it doesn't mean that that's what people believe. And it's not because they
Right.
don't know the truth, it's because they have their own set interests. And leftists take this for granted constantly. And so um they kind of pretend that the world really wants leftism. We're all just waiting on AOC. If AOC would just do the right thing. No, that's not how this works. She's going up against various different blocks of, different groups of interests. And
Right.
and she's playing a game of power. It's entirely possible that AOC is a great speaker and terrible
Hmm.
at politics. I mean, you brought
Obama
up.
was that.
Well, I was going to say, well, think about Walter Mondale that you brought up.
Yeah,
Um,
Mondale.
yeah, pretty good at, talking about things and stuff. Bad politician. Jimmy Carter. Yeah, I don't know about his speaking skills, but he was okay. Good enough to
Yeah,
get elected president, and bad politician. Didn't get anything done. And
yeah,
so you might have to accept that.
right.
And so, the fact that you have to explain this to people is
Yeah,
ridiculous. It's like,
yeah.
step outside. Realize
Look,
that
look at yeah, look at it from another point of view than the insider.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
accept that socialism is good, but that
yeah, and
it's
not
not it's not the truth, it's not the underlying nature of the world. It's something you have to fight for.
yeah. And a lot of the things that, like, going back to like an FDR type time, like a New Deal kind of liberalism that we had in the 40s. It's like the things that are considered socialism in this country, like, for example, food stamps, Social Security, uh, what's another social program? There's a thing for people with disabilities called Ticket to Work, where somebody with disability could be able to have assistance with finding a job if they wish to. Those things that are considered socialism, people have to live off of. And, I hope I'm not way off base here, but, like people that are like I want to say conservative types, but the right wing, but there are also some, very moderate leftist people out there as well that are conservative that, how do I say it? I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly so it makes sense. That are saying, "Oh, this is bad. This is terrible. This is
This is bad.
You
This
see
is
that a
terrible.
lot on the right wing,
Right?
like
Yeah.
a ton of people.
They kind of Well, it's funny that you bring up those things that they say is socialism. It's like, look, that's not socialism. That's progressivism. First of
Yeah,
all. And secondly, the thing is this is like, well, um we need these reforms because
yeah,
our civilization is no longer a civilization. It doesn't give back to its people. It doesn't allow for us to be prosperous except for certain people. And those people mostly benefit from the fact that they can put their money elsewhere. And we have been dragging ourselves from conflict to conflict to conflict. We have the enemy of the month club. There's a different
yeah,
enemy every other week. And we spend our time in a country that's falling apart, that's having sectarian problems. Hell, we just had a bunch of people on January 6th storm the Capitol.
yep,
If you want a Visigoth moment, that's right there. That's pretty fucking close.
yeah.
We didn't we didn't end up having anything necessarily bad happen, but
But
nevertheless, well,
there was a lot of frightening
right,
moments.
right, and it kind of goes to my point about saying, well, the left takes for granted, if people agree with them or not. They also take for granted that the revolutionary impulse in the United States is on the left. It's also fascist. Fascists want to turn over the system because liberalism doesn't help fascism either. It
No,
just
not at
doesn't.
all.
It's a weak enemy, but it's an enemy nonetheless. And so we watched people who stormed the Capitol, who have far right ideologies, basically take over the revolutionary impulse in the United States. And the leftists have the leftists, the populist leftists, not all leftists are like this, but the
Right.
populist leftists have the nerve to focus on a dress for 3 or 4 days. You have bigger problems. You have bigger
You have
issues.
bigger fish to fry
Yeah.
than focusing on this, this new
Absolutely.
politician dress.
Yeah. And so, you have more important things. And if you don't like the system, you don't like how AOC can get away with photo op activism, if that's really your thing, then realize you're going to have to start organizing things outside the system. That's what, and
They're gonna have to start thinking outside of the box.
Right. Well, yeah, you're gonna have to organize things outside of the halls of power and realize that a political party is the way to go,
Right.
and which it
And
is.
before we,
I
yeah, what was this say?
I was just gonna say I apologize. Is that better?
No, it's yeah. Do a mic check?
Yeah. So, all I was gonna say is that I think honestly the best way to deal with this is to set up a socialist political party, and not
Yeah.
like the DSA. I understand that they're trying to do their work in their own way, but
Right.
I feel like they've compromised too much with the Democrats, which I understand that they're a reconciliatory kind of power base.
Your by the way, your mic's still kind of cutting in and out.
I don't know how to fix that. That's
Yeah, I
Well,
just thought I'd point that out, but I can
yeah.
still hear you fine.
Well, long story short, a socialist party is the way to go.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off there. It's just
You're good.
yeah, I kind of actually see that too. I mean, again, like I hope it won't be like this People's Party. You know what I'm talking about? Like with the Jimmy Dore types are saying they're going to start this. Like, I don't call it necessarily a third party because we have enough of those already. I mean, I'm not saying I oppose everything they do. A lot of their stuff is reasonable, but we already have the Green Party as the third party in America. Do we really? And no matter how far this People's Party goes, I actually think it's something just merely on paper at this point. So yeah, I mean, a socialist party, like a leftist, I shouldn't say leftist, a left socialist party that's maybe in the vein of Bernie Sanders, maybe in the vein of who else? There's like a bunch of like socialist leftists that are again there could be like left populist, no matter how bad we love or hate them. There could be a bunch of democratic socialists. There could be a bunch of these alternative leftist people that have good intentions starting this party that is separate from the Democratic Party. And hopefully AOC and the squad could get behind that. But again, I don't know. It's just kind of a wait and see moment, man.
Right. Yeah.
It's like that's the kind of way Justice Dems, how they ran on this this platform of like being an alternative to the corporate establishment, and they're fulfilling their mission, but only at a certain cost of compromisation.
Yeah,
Sort of.
it's I would say that the socialist a socialist party, it's going to take longer to build than. Here's the problem I have with a People's Party with Jimmy Dore, whoever. His reliance is going to be entirely upon his audience. He's going to rely on what you could
donate.
Maybe. Well, I was going to say he's going to rely on what you could maybe call star power. It'd be like Oprah running for office. She's just relying on the fact that she has she's
name
relying
recognition.
on name recognition. That's not how you build a party. That's how you build a cult, if you want one. I'm not all for drinking Kool-Aid, but I would say that a socialist party is going to take some time. You have to build it up first.
You have to build it from the grassroots level.
Right. Yeah.
That's
don't
probably
focus. Right. I was going to say don't focus on running for president. Don't focus on running for governor. Don't focus on running for mayor. Right now, you want to make sure that people are showing up at the meetings. You want to make sure that people are having their voices heard. And then, maybe you go for local councils, right? And if you go for the local council as a socialist party, make sure you get some kind of majority. Make sure everything's working. And then you build up slowly but surely. But it's not this nonsense of, we're going to start a People's Party and Jimmy Dore. I don't care about that. And I don't want him to run. He's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a second-rate
no doubt about it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And for me, sometimes it feels like the people that this nation values kind of reflect the value, the people that we value tend to reflect the values of the nation. And we're valuing comedians, we might as well be listening to clowns. So
True enough. I mean, good point.
Yeah, and he's he's
it's like we elect let's say on a related note, we elect Hollywood people as politicians. Case in point, 2003, actor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has no political experience at all, got elected governor of California. Our last president, who has obviously no political experience, a reality TV show, got elected president. Nobody thought that would happen.
Right.
Same with Schwarzenegger, except with him, he didn't have an agenda. He just went on Jay Leno and said, "Hey, I'm running for governor of the state of California." During the first recall against Gray Davis. And, you had Caitlyn Jenner, running as Larry Elder. You have all these celebrity types. I don't know what else to call them, media types, running for political office because it's name recognition. It's a valuable way to do so. Unfortunately, this recall, however, the negative we both feel about Gavin Newsom, he didn't get recalled. So California, at least, is in some good hands. Well, I don't want to say really good hands because I don't live in California, but of course we don't live in California. But we,
Right.
we have our views on Newsom. I mean, he himself is not progressive. He's
Yeah.
moderate neo-lib. He survived this, but then he's got to get elected. He's running for re-election next year in 2022. Who's to say that a Larry Elder type won't come back for a rematch?
Yeah. And the other thing is this. Ronald Reagan was an acting president, and I feel
Yeah.
that since the Reagan era, I don't think that we've ever had a president that wasn't an acting president. I think we've just kind of gone through with presidents that can act very well, and it seems that politics is being turned into entertainment.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, I mean, power is still important in politics. It just means that as long as you bring a good PR team, you'll win.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, for me, um, if you're going to start a socialist party, it's gonna take a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't run on name recognition. You don't have time for that. You don't have time to screw up and get because losing an election, unfortunately, the American public is not very smart. And when you lose an election, they assume that means you're a bad political party in the sense that you didn't win or you didn't have the will of the people. And so every time
Right.
you go in and it's like the Libertarian Party. They go in and they lose. And if I tell you I'm a part of the Libertarian Party, outside of the fact that libertarian philosophy is ridiculous, outside of that, if I tell you I'm part of the Libertarian Party and I'm running for office, you know why I'm not going to vote for you? Because you're not going to succeed. They keep
Yeah.
losing,
You have zero chance of winning.
right, and they keep losing and losing and losing and losing, and the American people aren't very intelligent, and so they go,
Right.
oh, they're losing, they don't even read about libertarianism. They just say, oh, well, they're losing.
They just see him as an alternative to the Republican Party, the
Right,
same way that the Green Party is seen as an alternative to the Democratic Party.
right,
Ralph Nader's 2000 run. I know that we were very young at the time, but was seen as a move by the Democrats as a way of stealing the election, the votes away from Al Gore, and because of that, they've been seen as this like lefty party alternative to, as I said, the Democrats. But anyway,
right.
so to put a period on this sentence, I don't know. Should we just move on to the next part of your article because we've gone over an hour. It's almost 2, but I think we can do more. We should talk about the Nasser.
We should do it. I would say we should do it very quickly, because it's a fairly straightforward point that I make.
Okay.
The Larry,
Just a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Just a disclaimer. Obviously, we're going into some very heavy territory here with sexual violence and misconduct against this man who has now been convicted. This is just for the viewers who watch this and want to form their opinion. I know that we talked about it before we went on the air. We want to say, both of us equally, that we support the victims. We support the survivors, obviously. We support Me Too, and we're going to give you our valid critique, our valid viewpoint of Mr. Nasser and the crimes that he committed, if that's a fair point.
Well, Larry Nasser.
Nasser.
Nasser. My
I've been
apologies. Go ahead.
correcting you all. It's up.
Yes, yeah. Larry Nasser is a pervert. He's a pervert physician, and he was allowed to get away with it for many years. I think it's many decades almost. And they were having a trial about him. He's in jail. But they went through the process of how that came to be. And there have been shown various different holes, negligence, mishandling, and even down to it, the FBI not taking allegations seriously. And I wanted to write about that because there's a good deal of the time when somebody makes an accusation about sexual harassment or sexual abuse, where you are told by a lot of people, hey, you need to wait for the evidence. Don't judge things based off of whatever. Don't have an opinion. Christopher Hitchens has a dictum that he always brought around where he said, support the victim in their struggle always. And I believe in that. The worst that can happen if you stand with somebody who's a victim is that they end up being wrong.
Yeah.
And that's all about trust. And if you stand with a victim and it turns out they're not a victim, at least you took you took a position that sided with somebody who seemed to need help.
Yes.
But a lot of people will take a position where they tell you, they talk to you about due process, and they talk to you about needing to wait for the evidence and stuff. And I'm all for waiting for evidence. I'm all for trying to understand the situation and what's going on. I am also for, if you don't know anything, withholding your judgment because you don't have any evidence. But the problem I have, and the thing that the Nasser case reveals, is that our civil liberties in this country are weak. They have been kicked around by the government, who has violated them continuously with the NSA and the Patriot Act and going to war and things like that. Right. And I don't care for the phrase I'm about to use, but it's the best one. The breakdown of liberty. Actually, I'm going to avoid the phrase entirely. The breakdown of liberties at the top, and major issues like privacy, I think has made its way down to the lower levels of civil liberties that are meant to protect individuals. If the FBI can screw something up for several decades while this person is going around doing horrible things to athletes that we pick because of their talents that are supposed to represent our nation, our civil liberties are not very good in this country. And for me, as a leftist, if I see a case where somebody accuses somebody of sexual harassment or sexual abuse, the reason I side with the victim is not only because I think that's the right thing to do, but I also think it's because you can't trust the civil liberties in this country. You can't trust, the protections that are supposed to be offered to the citizen. And you can't be a leftist aware of all the systematic issues in the United States, legal or otherwise, and at the same time come over and tell me that, oh, we need to wait to see how the legal system sorts this out, because the Nasser case reveals that the legal system doesn't do a very good job of that, particularly the FBI, which in itself is a political football, basically. And so I wrote that article because I don't know, I get tired of that argument. First off, they always say that you need to, have sympathy with the person who's being accused, and they say it without evidence while telling you need to wait for evidence. It would be one thing to say, hey, I don't have an opinion on this because I don't have evidence. That's fine. That's not a problem. But when you go ahead and start advocating and you start, spinning yarns about how, it's entirely possible that this person made it up, blah blah blah. I don't want to hear that until you have evidence, until you have something. But even then, you have to understand that just because the right thing is going on, or the collection of evidence is happening, doesn't mean that our civil liberties are being used correctly.
Right.
And so there should be a deep amount of suspicion, in my opinion, of the system. And we should try our best to advocate for people, to make sure that they get taken care of by the system, a system that's very lacking. Instead of going around with this kind of fake style of liberty,
Yeah.
where I'm basically telling you to, ignore somebody's accusation. So that's what that article is about, or that second part of the article.
That second part of the art, yeah. Yeah, it was I would say it was a fairly good analysis of the Nasser case. What really kind of, I followed and heard about the case off and on throughout the last maybe 4 years, and it kind of surprised me. It surprised me of how much he got away with, and it comes back to I can't believe I'm using his name, but Harvey Weinstein, the mega movie producer who was able to pay off several actresses that he harassed and assaulted over the years, and going even when journalists like Ronan Farrow tried to break this story for a major network like NBC. NBC told them, no, you got to stand down and pause this. And the backstory to that was Harvey Weinstein had business dealings with these executives, and was blackmailing those executives by saying, hey, your guy is going to do a story on my own, how would I say it, troublesome history. Hey, I know you guys. You have your own troublesome history too. And not only that, we all did it in the 90s. Again, quoting Ronan, his book Catch and Kill, which I've read. It's actually a real good book. I will say that, in an honest opinion. He was like, yeah, it was the 1990s, and y'all did it too. And not only that, like he was able to send Russian spies, or a Russian spy organization called Black Cube, to spy on Pharaoh, to do whatever it was to kill the story. With case in point, with the Catch and Kill. So it's that kind of thing. Of course, Nasser wasn't able to do all that, but yeah.
Well, yeah, the only difference between Weinstein and Nasser is that Weinstein is a view of our lack of civil liberties from the top, where money circumvents the system, and Nasser is more of a middle area where he doesn't have the money to circumvent it, but he does seem to, the legal system breaks down anyway. It turns out you don't need money to make the system break down. It can break down on its own. And so either somebody has to tell me why I'm wrong about the civil liberties and about our protections, about due process, which is constantly violated in various cases. You either have to tell me why I'm wrong, or you need to stop putting a lot of, not you specifically, but people need to stop putting faith in the due process system and realize, especially with this Nasser case, as they should have realized with the Weinstein case, that the system doesn't work. And so that the advocacy for victims is more important than ever, because somebody's got to step in to deal with these legal shortcomings. And so, that's the main point about that. I don't know. I get tired of that argument where,
Yeah, it is an old argument that is, again, sounds like a lot of a broken record, and
Right. Right, and
it's
it's not even a good one. Um,
yeah, yeah, that's
and
true.
you know, even if you don't agree with the way culture has gone in consideration to sexual relationships, where sexual relationships are definitely anchored nowadays upon consent, or
Yes,
at least that's how it's preached. I'm not saying that that's
yeah,
necessarily how it's practiced, as we're seeing a lot
right,
of people don't practice it. But as far as how people talk about it, um, it's preached that consent's important. And even if you don't, if you weren't to necessarily agree with that, which I think you should, I think it's a very ridiculous notion to have a problem with that. But even if you did, you can't also, you have to back that up with kind of a blind faith in the system that isn't warranted based off the various miscarriages of justice.
right.
So, um, to quote Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, yeah. That says it pretty well. That sounds
Right.
thumbs up. All right, so I guess yeah, it's almost 2 o'clock, so I'm sure we've all got each of us have something.
Well,
Things
I
to
want
do.
to, I want to thank you for having these shows on Sundays. It's
Yeah.
it's appreciated. It's obviously a
Oh,
lot better than going to church. So,
yeah.
um,
This is our church.
they, I
It's
hope
our
I.
hour-long sermon that we have to sit through. Believe me,
Oh,
I don't follow.
you have to sit through it. My feelings are hurt now. No, I'm kidding.
No,
I'm
what I
kidding. No,
mean by
I
like,
know. Right. I know
well,
what you
like
mean.
I'm
Okay.
not. Yeah,
Right. I
obviously,
know
like,
I know what you mean. It's a kind of a discussion with larger issues.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say I'm not Catholic anymore. I'm Buddhist atheist, but it's like I had to sit through like those long sermonist lectures when I was 10 years old, and unlike this, that was something I did not want to hear. Now, this I want to hear. This is what
Right.
I want to do,
Uh,
and
right.
it's just something more informative.
When I was a kid, I used to be a Methodist. The only difference between them and Catholics is they add a bad guitar playing to their preaching.
Probably.
I'm just an atheist. I don't really have an epitaph or a label to go with that. Just atheist. Don't believe in spiritualism. Don't believe in um, anything else. I don't.
Right.
I even have a hard time believing in aliens. I don't really believe in those. I'm just an atheist.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know how better to explain that,
my
but
atheism is just to the point of I don't believe in God. But
yeah,
hey, Buddhism, yeah, I can sympathize with that because it's not necessarily like going to church because you don't have to if you don't want to.
right.
Uh,
It's a philosophy. Yeah,
yeah,
no, I understand.
I like the golden rule philosophy. I don't have to go to church, but I do subscribe to just equality and treating everyone as they are.
Right.
Other than
I
that,
guess I was just say I guess my religion would just be literature, but
yeah,
if
there
I
you
were to put
go.
it that way, but
That's a really good way to do it.
yeah,
All right, RC. Uh, I am getting used to this. I think I'm getting better at this every time. I
yeah,
guess the one
yeah,
hard thing is what to talk about because
right. That's why I
there's
try
so
to.
much going on.
Right. There's a lot going on, and that's why I try to, at least have an article or something to discuss. But,
Right?
um, yeah. But no, I understand. You are getting better at this, though.
Yeah.
But still, it's appreciated that you have me on Sundays.
Well,
So
I know sometimes I have trouble articulating my thoughts, and that's something I'm going to have to work on
yeah.
a little bit
Well,
more. But hey,
I don't want to be too starky, but who doesn't?
yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a bit.
All right.
Yeah.
So same time next week. By the way, I guess as this is a show, you're gonna have to plug your material as normal. So
Right. My name is RC Roberts. I write for the Substack Ferocia Animi, which you can find at ferocia.anime.substack.com. I am pretty lively on Facebook. I have a Facebook page for Ferocia Animi. I am an essayist and a cultural critic. I am a regular guest on this show, the TJRS show, as well as on the podcast These Are Bad Movies, which I have a button for right here.
Oh, that is so
Which
awesome.
you should check out this podcast as well as These Are Bad Movies podcast, and hopefully I was as eloquent as I am entertaining, and I will see you guys next week.
Yeah, we're hopeful to have Amy Bell from These Are Bad Movies on in the future. So,
Right.
RC, as always, see you next Sunday with another edition of our Sunday stream. So,
Right.
all right, that was RC Roberts, again, a Ferocia enemy. Check out his new installment of Notes in the Margins, AOC's Dress and the Nasser Case. It was very informative, very engaging, very everything under the sun. I suggest you go check it out. And as always, you can catch me tomorrow at 7 to 10 on Twitch and YouTube at our normal time. You can read me on Substack as well, tjrs.substack.com. Got new things in the kitty coming up in the next few weeks. Stay tuned. Follow me on social media, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all that good stuff. Donate to Patreon as much as you can. TJRS, patreon.com/TJRS. And also, as always, like and subscribe. Hit that thumbs up on the YouTube. So, with that said, I will see you guys tomorrow afternoon, or actually tomorrow night, rather, at 7 o'clock for another fun, engaging, informative show. So, as always, left is best. Rest in power to Michael Brooks. Rest in power to Ed Asner. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.